Welcome back, viewers. Thank you for staying with us. I am Natalie Sealy-Richardson, and again, it's always a pleasure to be with you when I can be on mornings. We are coming to you from downtown Scarborough on the beautiful island of Tobago, and this morning, sitting with me in studio is no stranger to Tobago, Mr. Ancil Dennis, political leader, yes, of the Tobago Council of the People's National Movement. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here on Tobago Updates. Let me say a pleasant good morning to you. And of course, good morning to your listeners and viewers. I know Tobago Updates have a huge following across Tobago, so it's a pleasure to be here.
And if I may add, not just Tobago, but throughout the entire world. Yes, we have a lot of viewers from the diaspora who would make sure to stay connected to Tobago through this medium. And of course, I want us to get right into our conversation. We're talking about how things are in Tobago, specifically comments made by Assemblyman Trevor James. And it's not only his view, but even a lot of people who are just average citizens, if I can refer to them that, talking about the strained relationship between Trinidad and Tobago. One of the reasons why people are pushing for autonomy in whatever form it may look like for them. It has been said that it may feel as though a dictatorship is being run from the Trinidad end when it comes to Tobago. What's your perspective on that?
Well, firstly, let me address the word dictatorship being bandied about by Trevor James and unfortunately the Chief Secretary as well. Farley Augustine seems to be parroting the same thing. I find it to be hypocrisy. Firstly, you cannot expect the police to take action as they want them to against illegal vendors, whether it be in Scarborough or recently down at Pigeon Point Road. They can't expect the police to take action against crime, and of course we have seen an increase in crime in Tobago. But when it comes to them, they seem to want some exemption from police attention. And I want to say to the people of Tobago that the attention is deserved. Because let's go back to Audiogate. Is it expected that the police will have access to a recording like everybody else that heard that recording, where public officials were heard, all of us heard it, plotting to utilize state resources illegally, and action should not be taken? Is it expected that Trevor James, the latest one to receive police attention, would have done whatever he did? Because none of us are quite certain of the nature of the investigations, at least I am not. So is it expected that they must break the law and the police should not investigate them?
And let me just ask you,
no one
Mr.
in this
Dennis,
country is above the law.
Is it that there's an issue with, because I listened to Mr. James, I've listened to people from the public, giving, of course, their opinion on matters like these. And the issue seems not so much that the procedure had to be done, but in the way it was done. And a lot of persons are asking if the licensing office has an issue with a vehicle and they need to re-inspect it, etc. Well, is there not another way to do it, and why it had to be done like this?
Well, again, we do not know the details of the circumstances. Correct. We are only hearing from Trevor James. Of course, the licensing officers and the police officers will not comment, and maybe that is what they are hoping to do, turn this investigation into a public spectacle, right, which will, of course, hopefully give them some kind of advantage if, in fact, it results in charges. So we don't know the full circumstances. We do not know if it's simply a vehicle inspection. We really do not know. The only information I have is the warrant, which is quite straightforward. There was a video of everything that transpired at Mr. James' residence, and as far as I'm concerned, based on everything that I saw in the video, the officers conducted themselves very professionally. So it appears to be that these people in office now believe that they are above the law. And as far as I'm concerned, the only threat to democracy in Tobago is their existence in public office. And if you were to examine their record, let's look at it. They have been firing Tobagonians from their jobs without due process. They have engaged
Is that a fair statement, though?
Yes, it's a very fair statement. If you examine the situation at TADCO, at Community Partnership Unit, and I myself have heard several stories from people coming directly to me where people are simply being fired from their jobs.
Is it that they're being fired because is it that they are being fired because their contracts were not in place prior to,
Good,
and
good performance
different things
appraisals,
like that?
good performance appraisals, working in the THE for a number of years, and I think everyone should know that according to industrial relations standards, if you are on contract for a certain number of time, you are considered as well as permanent. And all these matters, most of them, as a matter of fact, went to the industrial court, and recently the industrial court ruled in favor of some of those workers.
Right.
So I think the evidence is there to show that the workers were treated unfairly. We had Audiogate, we had this same Secretary of Infrastructure infringing on the constitutional rights of people right here in Tobago. On 3 occasions, he was taken to court, him and his division, for basically rolling into people's property without their permission, trespassing on their property. And the THE has several matters before the court. That is dictatorship. As a matter of fact, in one of the affidavits submitted by one of the aggrieved persons, a man from Trinidad by the name of Mr. Rampersad, the owner of Kilgren Estate, who has the THA in court seeking some $36 million in damages, he basically said the same thing. The fact that public officials do not respect land rights and the property rights of people in Tobago is in fact a creeping dictatorship. And to me, that is the only evidence of dictatorship that I've seen in Tobago, the actions and conduct of our public officials in office at this time.
But I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, and it's sad to say that it has become the norm in our politics, but whoever sits at the moment at the head, those on the outside will make accusations. Because of course, when the PNM was in charge for the last 20 plus years in Tobago, accusations were also made. Some of them may be wild, some of them turned out to be true. And it's just, part of how we deal with things, unfortunately, here.
So there's a stark difference between accusations and allegations supported by evidence.
Right.
Nothing I've said here about these individuals is not supported by evidence. Audiogate, there's the recording. The issues before the court, I have all the court documents. The public should also have access to all the court documents because some of them circulated widely. So there is evidence. We're not saying anything here that we don't have evidence to support. In the past, you're quite right, a lot of allegations were made against me. I've seen some of their supporters making some of the most unfortunate statements that police should seize my phone and arrest me. For what?
But once you're in public light, Mr. Dennis, these things come with it because you have PNM supporters as well. For example, a simple thing as our chat when we have Tobago updates. If we have someone like you, you find that the PNM supporters would definitely tune in. And there's this banter and the other side may make accusations. And when someone from the other side comes, of course, also accusations are made. And some of them are very frivolous. And sometimes I often wonder, are these people really thinking? Are they being reasonable? You may have your political preference. That's your right as a citizen. But sometimes I look at the conversations and what may come out from someone and wonder if they really, are they prepared to stand by that? And let's go back, as you mentioned, Audiogate, etc. So any political group in power, things happen, whether they are good or bad. And I want us to go back again and look at the process of how things are handled in Tobago, whether it may be PNM, PDP, the Tobago People's Party, whomever it may be. And look at how it may be handled from the Trinidad side, coming into what we may describe as like a takeover. For example, with Audiogate, we had officers from Trinidad ascending on people's offices, their homes, etc. We have with Assemblyman James, you have again Trinidad license office coming in. So the question is, and I'm asking you whether you answer as an individual or as political leader, if that can be separated. Are you comfortable with the operations that are currently taking place in Tobago when we look at how licensed officers are being sent from Trinidad and they come to carry out checks here?
We keep making this conversation about from Trinidad and from Trinidad. And it is quite unfortunate.
But that's what we see.
Right? The reality is it's the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The reality also is that the Anti-Corruption Investigations Bureau is based in Trinidad.
Right.
And a number of those other units charged with the responsibility for investigating white-collar crime,
Right.
corruption, which is what these individuals are facing the music for, comes from out of Trinidad. So obviously, if there is an investigation to treat with those things, the officers will come from Trinidad. The same applies to the bank. I worked in the bank for a number of years before getting into politics. And whenever there were issues having to do with fraud-related activities, the unit will come from Trinidad because that is where it's based.
Right.
So it's a conversation that Trevor James and Farley Augustine are deliberately having because it suits their political agenda, which is to pit Trinidad against Tobago. It is dangerous. It is only beneficial to them. It is not beneficial to the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is a selfish agenda aimed at giving them political benefit and hopefully presenting some kind of escape from their difficulties. So I'm rejecting it totally. Now, in terms of the licensing officers, Trevor was here talking a lot of foolishness about who licensing officers report to. The law is clear. The licensing officers report to the Transport Commissioner, right? And that is the Motor Vehicles Act. That is the law. Now, he's talking based on one line in the THE Act under the 5th schedule, which says licensing. That is all it says. It says nothing about licensing officers reporting to the THE. Now, obviously, over the years, that was interpreted to mean that the THE would have some kind of administrative responsibility for providing office space, for providing all the necessary requirements for them to conduct their jobs and discharge their responsibilities on the island. So the law is clear where that is concerned. So this conversation about officers coming from Trinidad to investigate them, the departments are based in Trinidad. And the reality is, if people did not conduct themselves illegally, if people subscribe to their oath of office to uphold the Constitution and the law, then we would have no reason for police to come from anywhere to investigate any public official in Tobago, which, by the way, is unprecedented.
Right. So I go back again. Are you comfortable with the way in terms of how the license office is executing their duties in Trinidad and Tobago, specifically Trinidad, when we have licensing officers from Trinidad coming to Tobago in large numbers? And yes, they have to do their duties, but a lot of people, again, are talking about the process. So are you comfortable with that process of the execution of their duties?
So two things I will say in response to that. One, the licensing officers are here on the invitation of the Tobago House of Assembly. They don't come here just like that. The Chief Secretary, coming out of his last meetings with the head of the police in Tobago and other officials, determined that that will be a good strategy to help curb the increasing murder rate and the increasing crime rate on the island. My own personal view is that different strategies should be examined because the reality is this. From the time the licensing officers place their vehicles on the ferry, a picture is taken, it is placed into WhatsApp groups, and the entire population of Trinidad and Tobago knows that they are coming to Tobago.
Okay.
Guess what? The people who are engaged in criminal activity, who are hell-bent on frustrating citizens and taking away our constitutional rights to enjoyment of property and freedom, etc., they don't come out on the road when they get that information. They hide, they remain underground, they park up their stolen vehicles. If they had any intention of committing a crime at that time, they will delay because they have the information and they wait it out, and the officers come, they conduct their duties. They may be able to find a few people whose vehicles may not be in proper working order. But the real issue of crime and people hell-bent on criminal activity is not necessarily addressed in that way. So I will prefer a situation if they can find a way to disguise those operations. I'm not against them coming to do their work because that is what they are being paid to do. But the manner in which it is being done at this time, I don't think we are realizing the important objectives of really treating with crime, serious crime on the island.
Right, and I want to go back again to the how. So I am one of those, and I agree with you that they have a part to play, and not just in crime, but there are a lot of people who are driving without licensing, without insurance, the heavy vehicles, truck drivers. Sometimes I'm driving behind one, and the load is not covered, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, if something happens, who is going to stand liability?
Correct. A lot of foolishness takes place on the road. A very good friend of mine was well, him and his spouse, unfortunately, and that still saddens me to this day, was killed by what appears to be the reckless actions of a driver on the road.
Right.
So yes, those issues need to be addressed, but I'm saying we can be more tactful, because if in fact, again, the information continues to get south, white shirts on the road, white shirts coming to Tobago, all the people with those serious infractions will stay off the road,
but
wait for them to depart, and come back out.
When it seems to be very heavy-handed, and when I say heavy-handed, in that you have a license officer stopping you, would do their routine checks, and then appears to be a little more zealous in making sure they find something wrong. So you have reports where persons would be like, they have their sticker, tires, the obvious things, okay. But then when the officer starts to do more examination, as though I stopped you and I'm going to issue a ticket today, I'm talking about that method. How do you perceive that? I mean, from us being a Tobagonian and hearing some of these stories, we know some of them are true, some may not be, but there are some that are true. How do you feel? Because it can happen to anyone.
Within the system, you're going to have people who might be misguided and overzealous. Let's not make any mistake about that. In any organization, including the TTPS, you're going to have people who will go beyond where they should be going.
Right, beyond their
that is reality, right?
In a negative spin, yes.
There are things put in place to deal with that, right? If a rogue licensing officer victimizes you or targets you in any way, there are ways to treat with that. The same applies to the TTPS. That's why we have the Police Complaints Authority.
Right.
That's why we have the court system. There are ways to treat with these things, right? So I think we have all the checks and balances in place, all the safeguards in place to deal with police officers and licensing officers whose intentions may go beyond basically keeping law and order and protecting and serving the population.
And of course, viewers, we take a quick break. When we return, we continue our conversation with Mr. Ancil Dennis this morning.
It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawn. Let's go, go.
Welcome back, viewers. If you are now joining us here on Tobago Updates Television, I am your host, Natalie Sealy-Richardson, and sitting with me is Mr. Ancil Dennis, political leader of the Tobago Council of the People's National Movement. And we continue to, have this interesting conversation and hear from the PNM's perspective in Tobago. And before we switch gears a bit, Mr. Dennis, you made the point of the importance of the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago. And as you mentioned that, I want you to, from that perspective, do you think that central government is doing enough to curb crime on the island of Tobago? We see what's happening, daily here.
Well, crime has several layers. You have the detection of crime, which is the responsibility of the police service. And of course, you have prevention of crime.
Right.
Which is not the sole responsibility of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The Tobago House of Assembly has serious responsibilities right here on this island when it comes to securing the island. Issues such as community development, youth and sport, the general economy, I think all of those go hand in hand with creating an environment on the island that is not conducive to crime. Over the last 3 years, almost 3 years, I think the economy of Tobago has been seriously mismanaged, and I dare even say deliberately so, because we have a situation where money that used to circulate on the island when the PNM was in charge, and I'm talking about this $300 million, $350 million to $500 million spent on development on the island every year, that money has disappeared from the Tobago economy. And when I say disappeared, we have a situation where all those Tobago contractors, all of them, have been sidelined, no payments, no jobs. The people they used to employ, where are those people now? The young men in particular in the communities. And we're talking at-risk communities like Bethel, communities like Plymouth, like Buku, like Speyside, like Charlottesville.
All
like,
the villages,
where,
Mr. Dennis.
Where
all.
are those young men now? That's a question that we need to ask. That money is now being placed into the pockets and bank accounts of contractors from outside of Tobago. We saw one contractor got $70 million to do a half-picked dock incomplete roundabout. $19 million to do a road in town. $60 million to do another road in Pigeon Point.
I have a
Where is
question.
that?
I have a question.
Where is that money going? That
Right.
money is leaving the Tobago economy and going elsewhere. People across the island are complaining all the time. The place is heavy. The place is hard. And I don't think Farley Augustine and his team understands basic economics, because they may feel it's about coming in and victimizing people who they consider to be PNM contractors and taking away jobs from them and giving them to their friends in Trinidad, not understanding that more than the impact that you will have on those individuals and their families and their businesses, there's a wider Tobago economy and a wider Tobago community that is feeling the pain and feeling the hurt and are experiencing a more difficult life than they were prior to this administration coming into office. And I firmly believe that that kind of environment, I'm not saying that people who can't make ends meet should go and commit crime. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that kind of environment is conducive to what we are seeing happening on the island today where crime is concerned. So the Tobago House of Assembly has a serious responsibility in keeping the people of Tobago safe and keeping our island calm, green, clean, safe, and serene.
Right. And as you mentioned that, one, I know, of course, we know there's a new procurement law in place and things have to be done differently. So do you think that also has some impact on the way forward? And I'm asking.
These people are not even following the procurement law. These people are bypassing the requirements of the procurement law. As a matter of fact, these people are not even having procurement. Let's examine the latest, the only project that they believe they have delivered to the people of Tobago, the roundabout and the incomplete road. I challenge you to examine the public records, whether it be EID cut, whether it be the Division of Infrastructure, and check to see if there was any public information that allowed any contractor in Tobago or otherwise to compete, to bid for that project. So they are not even following the procurement legislation. And I want to say this, I hope when the police comes and the Office of the Procurement Regulator comes and the Integrity Commission comes knocking on people's door, that they don't turn around and sing the same song that they are singing now about dictatorship, when in fact their own illegal actions and flagrant abuse of the law is putting these institutions in no other position but to act, because they are duty bound to act, especially when reports are made. You see, if no reports are made, they can perhaps ignore it and give them a blind. But when reports are made about these kinds of behaviors, the police, the Integrity Commission, and all the other institutions with that responsibility are duty bound to investigate at a minimum.
Right. And just following up again on that question about crime on the island, and you would have mentioned the role THA has to play, admitting the fact that, yes, there are many layers to why we may have crime. I want us to go back to the TTPS central government, because central government is in charge again of Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Coast Guard. Do you think enough again is being done to deploy, and I would use the word limited because everybody in government will say resources are limited, the limited resources to ensure that Tobago is being taken care of? Because we know that Trinidad and Tobago, yes, and you may provide a political perspective, but for those of us who live day-to-day average lives, and I am from Trinidad, moving to Tobago, I have been amazed at the disparity between the two islands. And not because of any political party per se, my perspective, but just how central government handles and the systems in place between Trinidad and Tobago. Why it is, if you don't have a Coast Guard vessel, or it may not be deployed here, it has to come from Chagaramas. Of course, I know we do have one here. I heard the Minister of National Security recently in a media briefing talk about 8 vessels are out for maintenance. And I'm thinking, if my family has 2 vehicles, we can't send the 2 of them for maintenance at the same time. Why these 8 vessels have to go for maintenance at the same time? What happened? Things like that.
The system within which these vessels are maintained obviously is broken. The vessels are not being maintained as they should be. And that is why we have a situation where the Coast Guard at this point in time does not have enough assets, right? That is the reality. That is something I'm prepared to admit. And it has to be treated with, right? But yes, the central government is responsible for national security.
Right.
But who is responsible for Tobago security? There is nothing preventing the Tobago House of Assembly from taking the necessary steps to secure our island and its people.
How are they going to
national security
secure borders? The Tobago House of Assembly.
National security is one thing, right? You have as well Tobago's security.
Right.
Now, I mentioned things like community development. What has that division been up to in terms of ensuring that we have community programs in place that will treat with things like mediation, that will treat with healing, that will treat with ensuring that we treat with some of the social issues? What is the division of social services been up to? I'm hearing endless complaints about people in need, can't access food cards, can't access rental support, right? That department has gone to sleep, right? The same individuals who were campaigning all across Tobago, Farley, Augustine and others, saying to the people of Tobago that we'll be there for you, you can call us anytime. Guess what? The Chief Secretary phone is dead, no response, right? People complain all the time. So I'm saying all these areas of responsibilities are also geared towards ensuring that we have a safe environment in Tobago. The people that are in need must be taken care of. The people that are most vulnerable, especially the young men, we must have the programs in place. The young people in particular, we must have the programs in place. And more than that, how you manage the Tobago economy is also tremendously important. I mentioned already the classic mismanagement of the Tobago economy that is taking place, and that has to be dealt with. In addition to that, the Chief Secretary, although he is not the Minister of National Security, has the authority to meet with the head of the police in Tobago, as he have done, to meet with the head of the regiment in Tobago, as he has done, and they discuss strategies and they discuss ideas and approaches that can be specific to Tobago to treat with the security of Tobago. I heard him talking foolishness recently about renting pirogues for Coast Guard officials. The Division of Fisheries, the Division of Agriculture, which fisheries falls under, has 2 reef patrol vessels. During the pandemic period, when I was Chief Secretary, we utilized those vessels to ensure that we enforce the pandemic regulations at the time, to prevent people from gathering in the reef and that kind of stuff. And Coast Guard officers boarded those boats. Police officers boarded those boats when the need arose. So we have a crime problem now. We have a problem now where the Coast Guard, due to its limited resources, is unable to do what we will expect them to do. And I'm saying the Tobago House of Assembly can utilize those vessels, partner with the police, partner with the Coast Guard, and do what is required.
Right. And though they may have these conversations as a courtesy to whoever sits as Chief Secretary, the head of the TTPS, the head of the regiment, they take orders from someone else. So what happens when you have these conversations?
The police don't necessarily take orders from anyone else but the police commissioner. The minister, right, doesn't spearhead investigations.
Right.
He doesn't necessarily spearhead strategies. They will discuss overall policies, and he has a responsibility to ensure that national security has the resources. And this country's largest portion of the budget unfortunately goes towards national security. We are spending serious money just to treat with a minority of the population, hell-bent on terrorizing the majority of the population where crime is concerned. So the chief secretary, just like the minister, does not have the legal authority to instruct the police, right? But there can be discussions, and there are discussions. And I'm sure the police service will be open to having those discussions. As I said before, the removal of the vendors in Scarborough was not by chance. The removal of the vendors in on Pigeon Point Road, going into Pigeon Point, down at Swallows there, was not by chance. That came out of discussions with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Tobago House of Assembly, the Chief Secretary in particular, and they identified that as a possible way to reduce crime. And it is quite interesting that where this Tobago House of Assembly is concerned, all the crime-fighting initiatives are geared towards treating the most vulnerable people in Tobago in a particular way. And I find that to be interesting.
And as we talk about PNM Tobago, we talk about the political party here, of course, preparing themselves for elections, preparing themselves to be the next administration. Are you prepared? Do you think that, and if you are Chief Secretary, that the economic state of Tobago can't get any better and will get any better?
Personally, I believe 100% that I'll be, or that I was actually. I keep forgetting that I was once the Chief Secretary. I believe 100% that I was a far better Chief Secretary than the one in office now. I think I was more accessible. I think I was more concerned with the realities and the plight of the people of Tobago. I think I was a better leader. I think I was a better planner. I think I was far better. As it relates to preparing for the future, the People's National Movement in Tobago as an organization is preparing not just to govern Tobago and not just to win an election, but we are preparing to rescue Tobago because we believe that it has to be a rescue act. The Tobago economy is at an all-time low. The unemployment in Tobago has exploded. They have fired approximately 300 people from the Tobago House of Assembly. The construction sector has been destroyed totally, causing about 2,000 people who had employment in that sector to now be jobless. I asked the question earlier, where are those young people? What are they doing? Are they doing the 10 on, 10 off that the Chief Secretary and Trevor James put together? Or are they engaged otherwise, doing other things that we hope they will not be doing? So we are preparing to rescue Tobago. We are preparing to have a comprehensive plan to improve our agricultural sector, to improve our tourism sector. And I must admit that in some cases, it will simply be a continuation of what was started during our last few months in office. There's a farmland development program that we started, and that program was simply about identifying vacant areas of lands. Lamy Road was one area, Belmont Road, Friendship Estate, Indian Walking Moriah, about 5 or so estates. We identified them. We had selected Tobago contractors. We were about to spend about $80 million developing those areas to put in roads, electricity, water, etc. And we identified just over 200 farmers, promising farmers, to go in, occupy those areas and produce. TATCO also had a mandate to ensure that they find the market for persons who were so willing to work with TATCO to get their produce into Trinidad and perhaps the regional and international markets. So agriculture was about to take off. This administration came in, they decided that they have other priorities. That program required $80 million. They decided they're going to spend $70 million on one road. And that same road, the central government was prepared to do it as part of the airport project. So agriculture is at a standstill. And I want to mention this because, interestingly, I shared a meme a short while ago on my Facebook page. And it is sad to me that one of the farmers that I visited a few years ago, who I consider to be the most talented or the most serious poultry farmer on the island at the time, and I mean no disrespect to the others,
Right.
like Fanta Carrington and Melissa and the others, but I'm just saying at the point in time, he had the biggest project, well organized,
Right.
ready to take off with the right support. We identified, I think it was 5 acres of land for him to go in and occupy at Belmont Road, because the reality is that he was occupying in a residential area at his home, and I think the neighbors had an issue with that because I guess of the smell and,
Yes.
and stuff like that. Today, he's no longer operating. And I find that to be very sad, right? Because we have a number of serious farmers on the island, be it poultry, be it crops, right? Very serious, with serious potential. I saw it myself, and all they required was that basic support, land, infrastructure, and perhaps some financial injection to get going. And I think by now the Tobago agriculture sector would have been transformed. Tourism is another area. We depend highly on domestic tourism, and I
Yes.
don't see anything wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I see that as a unique advantage that
Yeah.
we have that the other destinations don't have.
Quite true.
Right? We have 1.3, 1.4 million people in Trinidad that we can easily market to. It's cheap to get here. And to me, that should be our first call for tourism. Of course, we have the international market. There is serious potential in the cruise sector. There is serious potential in international tourism generally. I think TTAL at the point in time when Louis Lewis was the CEO were heading in the right direction. We were seeking out additional flights. This administration came in, they decided to cancel a flight from our main source market, which is the United Kingdom. So they pulled Virgin. We only now have British Airways. And therefore we have to ensure that we put the things in place. The infrastructure as well for tourism has to be dealt with. We had plans on the cards to ensure that we improve some of the existing sites and attractions, and we were going to create new ones as well. All those plans were there and left for them. Now I'm seeing something about Storby Beach Club, and they want to put a pool
Right.
at the Storby Beach, and they want to close it off from the public and stuff like that, right? So I think Tobagonians must ask themselves a very serious question. We voted for these people based on promises that they made. They promised to fix this. They promised to fix the Tobago economy because according to them, it was broken. They promised to fix the healthcare sector. And by the way, there are some very, very serious, grave challenges within our healthcare sector, especially as it relates to women's health, women going into the hospital, pregnant, who should, of course, expect the best treatment to carry babies healthily to full term, hopefully, and even in cases where they may not be able to go to full term, we expect that our healthcare providers will provide the best care so that babies can be born, because that is something we want to happen in
Right.
Tobago.
Yes.
We are hoping that the Tobago population will increase a bit. I've contributed 3.
You played your part.
And perhaps there might be more, who knows, right? But there are serious challenges with the healthcare system.
Right.
A number of dotishness is taking place. Some of it I will not mention at this time. I'm still doing my investigation,
Right.
still receiving information, but we have to look at the healthcare system. So they promised to fix everything.
Right.
And I think we have to admit, whether we like the PNM, whether we hate the PNM, whether we like Farley or not, we have to admit, when we look at the performance and the track record, everything that they have promised to fix have become broken. Things that were working have broken down. Things that were not working so well have gotten worse.
Right.
They have fixed nothing. They have improved nothing. The only thing that has improved under this administration is their personal situation.
Let us take a break with that, and when we return, we will conclude this conversation and wrap up. So stay tuned right here.
It's a brand new. Good morning, Tobago.
Welcome back, viewers. Thank you for staying with us. And we continue our conversation with Mr. Ancil Dennis, political leader of the Tobago Council of the People's National Movement. And we just have a few minutes to wrap up this conversation. And before we leave, Mr. Dennis, tell us about the PNM upcoming public meeting.
Yes, we have a meeting in Tobago East on Sunday, the 15th of September, a meeting that I'm looking forward to.
I can tell. I see when I asked you the question about the public meeting, the smile just came out.
Yes, because we have some very interesting information to reveal to the people of Tobago. A lot is happening behind the scenes in Tobago's governance. We have, fortunately, some whistleblowers on our side. And I shouldn't say they're on our side. They're on the side of the people of Tobago.
Right.
And when they see wrong things, they provide information. And we get to determine when we're going to tell the people of Tobago certain things. Not everything we will say publicly. Some things will be reported to the relevant authorities for their information and investigation. But that is going to be another one of our public meetings. Over the last couple of years, we have been having these public meetings every quarter, where we go and we talk to our members and the people of Tobago generally, and we discuss critical issues affecting the people of Tobago. So we are heading into Tobago East at the Bell Garden Multipurpose Facility, and I want to invite all Tobagonians, whether you support the PNM or not, especially those who don't necessarily support a political party, but you are simply about Tobago's business and the improvement of Tobago and the lives of the people of Tobago, to come out to that meeting. It is going to be a platform of truth, a platform of education, a platform of information, and unfortunately, a platform of revelation of some of the misdeeds and the misgivings of operators within this current Tobago House of Assembly administration. I think on Friday we have a walkabout in that area as well. And we have been walking. The PNM is on the ground several months now, interacting with the people of Tobago, talking to them, getting mostly feedback, right? Because we want to ensure that we are in a position to do a lot better than we did in the past. I think our track record in the Tobago House of Assembly has been significant. I think we engage in a lot of development on behalf of the people of Tobago, but we want to better that next time around. We want to be able to do a lot more in a faster period of time. So we are preparing ourselves for that. As I said,
tell us where the meeting is and the time.
At the Bell Garden Multipurpose Facility, and it is going to be at 5 p.m. in the afternoon.
All right. So for those of you interested, that's something to do Sunday evening, whether you have your party membership card with the political party, or if you are one of those who just wants to know what's going on the island, and you can visit. I always encourage us. I know many of us are a particular color till we die, but we live in this space, and I always encourage, especially our young ones coming up, who sometimes are a little bit maybe more exposed and have access to information. You have to listen to issues. It's far too long. Many of our politicians are just into name fighting and calling and back and forth. And really, we don't hear about the issues at hand and what the plans are really for us here, whether you live Trinidad, Tobago, or wherever in the world. So that's a challenge I always put out to our politicians, to our young people who are interested in politics. Let us know what you really want to do and don't get caught up. Of course, it's always interesting when we have leaders come and sit with us to share with us from their perspective, and the time is always too short. So wherever you are on this island, of course, I encourage you to be safe. And as we get ready for, all the political meetings and everything that has been happening, listen to the facts. Don't just jump on a bandwagon. Listen to what's really going on. Assess the information that is put out there from everybody, not just one party, so that you can make an informed decision. I am Natalie, and thank you so much for joining us on GMT this morning.
Let's go. It's a brand